Rocco, life is about change now. Firefox, DuckDuckGo, XFCE.
Wow, that was deep.
I'm an XFCE fan. I got to go with Ryan on that one.
Yeah, man.
That was deep.
But you do have a gnome, Rocco.
I do have a gnome.
You have a pet gnome.
And if you can't see it, Dolphin, it says I love XFCE. It was given to me by somebody. Ryan.
You know, that's pretty meta. A gnome that says I love XFCE.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Because Rocco loved gnome back in the day, but now he's going to convert to XFCE.
You know, you have to pronounce that gnome, though. It's a gnome.
Well, we decided yesterday that we're going to go with Tux Digital's version of it, and we'll just say GNOME Gnome.
GNOME. There you go.
That way, everybody's happy or pissed, one or the other.
All right, is everybody ready?
We are ready. Let's do this, Rocco.
All right, let's kick it off.
Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux podcast.
Welcome to episode 47. I'm Rocco.
And I'm Ryan.
And this is Destination Linux. This week we have news to cover. That's if we get time for it, because we have another interview with an awesome guest. Today on the show we have Dolphin Oracle from the MX guys. So, Dolphin, you've been on the show. You were on the show way back in episode 2.
That's right.
It was great.
Back then, I was mostly the big evangelist YouTuber for Antics and MX. So, you know, I'm a little bit in a different position these days. So.
All right, well, let's start there then. What position are you in with MX?
Well, with MX, I'm one of the lead developers for MX now. This go around with the 17, I'm actually responsible for putting the ISO together. I don't know. We don't really have a title for it, but call it a release manager, I guess. Kind of that idea, anyway. But we kind of split things up a little bit so the Antics guys can focus on the Antics project a little more. And then we're trying to take over more of the actual technical building stuff on the MX side. And actually it's leading to a better product on both sides, I think. We've got to spread the chores around a little bit more.
You know, you brought in Antics in your YouTube video. You have a lot of Antics videos out there as well. And so describe for our listeners, what is the relationship between Antics and MX, and what's the purpose of one over the other? Okay.
So a lot of people, and I find on my channel, a lot of comments from folks say, you know, a lot of these lightweight distros started with a heavier distro, and they lightened those up. So when they look at Antics, they think, well, that's just MX lightened up. It's actually the other way around. Antics is actually originally branched off of Mepis or Mepis, depending on how you say it. I don't actually know. It's a weird word, one of those another weird words.
Thank goodness, because we didn't either.
Well, little known fact, MX is actually pronounced Fred, but we don't tell people.
It's pronounced what?
It's pronounced Fred.
Really?
Really joke,
okay.
You know, it's so ridiculous, the naming convention sometimes. I would have believed it. I'd have believed it.
Whole thing.
You'd have seen my next YouTube video talking about Fred.
That's going to be the title of the show. Dolphin Oracle of Fred.
So anyway, Mepis around 2006, the developer Antics, Capitalista is his whole name. We call him Anti, or Anti here in the U.S. He spun off a lighter weight version. Mepis was based on KDE 4, I think the original, or actually a 3, the original. That's how far back Mepis goes. So KDE 3, and then Mepis 12 was supposed to be KDE 4, but 12 never happened. The lead developer, Mepis was actually a one-man show. Even though they had a community, it was really controlled by one person. And he was a great guy, but he was in it for the money, and the money went away. So he went to pursue other things. He's still around. He still hosts a few of our premieres for us. But so he left, and that left Antics as the new mothership for the project. Really, Mepis is gone. So Antics developed. There's several more versions since the last Mepis. Well, the MX community was originally called the Mepis community, and they were the people that actually bought and paid for subscriptions to Mepis for the support and all that stuff. And these guys really wanted their own distro. So one of the leaders, one of our project manager, actually Jerry, his login name's Jerry3904, and Auntie got together and said, well, let's try to develop something together. And that came the first MX14. At the time, we weren't even calling ourselves MX Linux at the time. We just needed a name and put it out there before Christmas, and it just kind of went from there. So MX14 was the first edition, but it's actually based on Annex. So we take the Annex build system and the live system, the live USB system, which is fantastic, the Annex live USB system. We've been thinking about putting a little logo on there. It says, the best little live USB on planet Earth.
I like it.
Because it's awesome, and it's getting better all the time. But we take that, we take their build system, their live system, and we smash it all together and spit out MX Linux. It's actually based on the Annex spin called Core, which is basically you get a command line terminal, and that's it. If you saw my video I just put up yesterday for the console environment in Annex, that's basically what you get with Annex Core.
I did see that.
But we start with, so it's pretty plain Jane when we start. So MX isn't Annex. Well, it's kind of Annex. It's kind of Annex. The core bits of it are Annex, but all the software that the user sees, for the most part, outside the live system configurations, is different. And we share the installer, and we share. They actually have some MX tools in Annex now that they've taken back. They just ripped the branding out of it.
So at what point would I use, what would be my use case for MX versus Antics? What kind of user would you like MX? Which kind of user would prefer Antics?
Well, MX is actually, Annex is more true to staying stable, okay? And I say stable in the Debian sense, Debian stable. Antics, they kind of push the envelope over there. They've got usually their own kernels. They've got things tooled sometimes towards older machines, which was the original focus of the project, and it still is a major focus. Right. MX doesn't care so much about the older machines. Yes, we'll run on a lot of older hardware, but not as much as what Annex will run on. So if you're trying to rehabilitate a really old machine, and by really old, I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't run. I mean, we got people that do, but I wouldn't run MX on a Pentium 4. I mean, you could technically,
right?
I don't think you're going to have very good experience, especially this stretch. The stretch base is heavier than the Jessie base, which was in turn heavier than the Wheezy base. It doesn't get lighter; it gets heavier. Annex tries to stay leaner. Annex, the 32-bit Annex ISO will still boot with a full desktop, and you're still running like 70 megabytes of RAM. Okay. I actually have a so I use that on my really old stuff. I got one of those original EV PCs, little ones with the little 9-inch screens. The original books. I got one of those. I can't run MX on that machine. Even the 32-bit MX. I can run MX14 on it, which was kind of the original target for MX14. That's one reason the bars on the vertical on the side, because it worked out better on the EPCs, because they only had half-size resolutions anyway.
Right,
the original ones. So Annex will run on that machine comfortably. So that's what I use on that machine. And in fact, I still have that machine. It's like 12 years old or something now. I take it camping with me. So nice. If I watch I'm a Boy Scout leader, the kids go to bed, I watch a movie, put my headphones in and watch a movie so I can't hear them staying up all night. and that's the machine I take. It's rugged. You can drop it a few hundred times if it's not going to break. And Annex just runs like a dream on it. So that's the machine. If you got old hardware, and we got a lot of guys on our system using old hardware, that's Annex. That's not necessarily MX if you're trying to do something really neat. If you want to build something up from core, like your own, like a Mate spin, for instance, you can do that on core probably easier than you can do it on MX. Gotcha. Because they've got some different things in their package installer. They've got their own hosted Mate packages, for instance.
So the MX name, it came from?
Well, it's Mepis and Annex. So it's the M from Mepis and the X from Annex.
Got it.
You wouldn't believe how long we debated a name.
I would believe it.
You would. I don't know. You name stuff.
Yeah, I would believe it.
So we eventually went with something simple, and that's why you get the little pyramids with the X behind them, because the pyramids came from the Mepis project, and the X comes from Annex.
Very cool.
Nice. All right. So before we go any further with MX, at some point in your history, you were probably dare I say it, a Windows user.
Sure.
So at what point in history do you decide, I'm going to try Linux. I'm going to run Linux. I'm a Linux user.
Okay, so the first time I tried Linux was 2006 or so, late 2006. My first distribution was Ubuntu 6.10. I forget the code name for it. But that's back when, you had to research your wireless card, to make sure the drivers were available.
Everyone seems to have haunted memories back then of wireless cards, because everyone who talks about Linux back then, that's the first thing they bring up, the wireless card.
I hunted. I had this computer I started with was so old. It had a floppy drive in the side of it, and a CD bay, not even a DVD drive. This thing and it weighed like 20 pounds. It was just terrible.
Well, 610, I just looked it up, was codenamed Edgy.
Edgy, yes, Edgy Edge.
Edgy.
That's right.
It's so edgy, you'll never have a wireless driver, apparently.
Well, we actually, me and a guy in the Annex in the Annex forums figured out how to compile the Raylink drivers for Annex. Because Ubuntu was too heavy, Xubuntu was too heavy. I don't think the other Ubuntus were around yet. Maybe Kubuntu, but I don't remember. All the other ones weren't around. Ubuntu was still GNOME 2. Xubuntu, I could actually type faster than Abby Word would keep up with it. I could type faster than the text would show up on the screen. So some really nice people in the Ubuntu forums. There's some, I assume, I haven't been there forever, but I assume there's still good people in there. We were setting up a Fluxbox. They introduced me to Fluxbox. And that I could keep up with. My machine didn't choke, and it was fine. Well, then I started looking for Flux. Every time Ubuntu updated, and that was before the LTS stuff, I went looking for another Fluxbox distribution. I ended up in Slackware. I was all over the map with this stuff. And I ended up with the Annex guys. And then we figured out how to easily compile the Raylink drivers for Annex. And then we started recommending to everybody in the Annex forums to buy Raylink cards, even though the driver wasn't included in the kernel. We had this great wiki, for doing this. So I guess that was about the time that we decided we were going to be Linux users.
Nice.
I've been on Annex, and then later MX ever since. So since probably full time since 2008.
Well, let me ask you this. So MX, first of all, I have an interesting history with MX because very early on, because I'm a newer user of Linux, and very early on, the community of MX came into my channel and were telling me, you've got to try this. At this point, I was just beginning on Linux. So I did. I went and I made a video, and you actually commented on it way back then, and so did Rocco before I really officially knew him. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And we'll get into some of the things that I loved about it a little later. But one of the things that I've been thinking about now after playing with 17 is it's based on Debian, which is obviously a very stable platform. One of the things I pushed is, you were talking about MX being for newer hardware, is a lot of the stuff I had seen up to a point was about Linux being on slower machines. Linux is great for this old machine. I wanted to put Linux on the fastest stuff you could get. When you have something like Ubuntu that has regular or faster release cycles, is there an advantage to that if you're trying to be on the latest, greatest hardware that MX wouldn't be able to execute on because it doesn't have the same release cycles?
Okay, so here's something interesting. That's a great question. And actually, we were supposed to release MX17 Beta 2 this morning, but we, at the last second, we're trying a new kernel. Sort of kind of to address what you're talking about. We're bumping up. I think Beta 1's a 4.9 kernel. We're moving up to a 4.13 kernel. It was a big hop, and anyway, something went haywire with the download. So probably to be Monday before we release. But that is solely because we're trying to pick up some more of these AMD chips. There's a better support in the 4.13 and even further on down the road. So how do we deal with that? Even though Ubuntu does release quite often, their LTS doesn't release very often at all. What is that? Every 3 years, 4 years? I mean, I don't know how often they update their kernel. It's been a while since I ran Ubuntu, but we addressed this a little bit with our test repo, and our test repo is not Debian testing. Again, I was like, I wish we had named this thing something else, but we didn't. So our test repo addresses some of this. We have newer LaCorix kernels in the test repo. We have newer Xorg stacks. We have newer, all sorts of things that we don't want on the stable but that if you're coming to it with newer hardware, we'll boot on your machine almost certainly. But the later packages may help you get the performance you're looking for that way.
Nice.
Also, one of the things we did is we've tied in our Nvidia installer into Debian backports, which isn't as easy as it sounds because Debian backports is a little weird with how they set up you can't just enable the repo and go to town. You have to really particularly get what you want. At any rate, they're starting to bring in, they haven't in the past, but they're starting to bring in later Nvidia drivers into Debian backports. So DDM MX will let you choose which one you want, the one from the stable Debian repo or the one from the Debian backports. Or actually, if there happens to be a later one in our repo, that'll show up too.
Nice.
So we use Debian stable as the starting point. We've also got some Annex stuff, which tends to be a little further along. And then we've got our own MX repo that's got all kinds of new things. Like one of the things they brought in the package man in the test repo this week is a version of KDN 17, which I think Kden Live 17, which I think it's 16 something in Debian stable right now. So we try. We're users. We built something we want to use. We're not interested in running on every piece of hardware on the planet. And I mean like the ARM architectures. A lot of people want to spread out and put it on everything. Oh, I want to run MX on my calculator. Well, we don't care about calculator. Okay, that's awesome. Use something else for that.
All right.
Well, how big is the MX team, and how much do you rely on community support to help?
Okay, so the core MX development team, there's three of us. There's three of us kind of driving the boat a little bit. But then we got a package team, an art team, a forum moderator team, plus the Annex guys chip in. And I count myself as an Annex guy because I'm heavy on the beta testing for Annex. But so there's 20-ish on our team right now full time, including packagers and repo guys and art people and all that. We were blessed this time to have some folks want to contribute art. So most of the art, actually all the artwork, in 17 has been user contributed. So I'm really happy about that. We really didn't have to.
You know what I should contribute, Rocco? Is that wallpaper I just made.
Right. No, don't contribute that wallpaper. All right. So what do you see as the biggest need that you need from the community as far as support? I mean, do you need translations or what do you need?
Well, translations are always huge. And right now, we're starting to get a new focus on better localization. Hopefully in 17 beta 2, like the Thunar custom actions have always been a weak spot because our actions have never been translated. We're starting to do that. We've got French done. We're getting the others. We try to package about 12 languages localized for the OS itself. So that's always a kicker, and I recommend people drop in our forum, see old Giza in the translation. I think we got a translation subforum, and he's also on TransFX. We got all our stuff up there. So that's always a big one. The other big one is packaging. We're actually looking for packagers right now. In the last year, we've lost 2 for various reasons, not necessarily related to any falling out or anything. They just for whatever reason can't continue as routine packagers. We've got 3 main packagers right now, and you wouldn't believe how much. We got one guy, Steve-O, and he's active on the Debian forums. You wouldn't believe how much this guy packages for our repos. It's just amazing. He's got multiple machines running all the time packaging stuff.
Wow.
So packaging is a big one, and we're looking to replace a couple of members. We really need probably 2 more to be comfortable. And then we're also looking for help in the future to add Lux encryption to the installer. We don't have that right now. I was hoping to get that in 17, but it just didn't come together for us this time. So we'll have to add that in the future. We have home folder encryption, but not the other. So that's kind of the big things right now. But the MX manual is being translated. That thing's 175 pages. So to get that into multiple languages, and right now the 16 manual is the only one fully translated. It's in French. So translations is huge, especially for a project our size. We're I don't know if you call us mid-size or small size, but that's always huge for us. And I'm always giving big shout outs to our translators because that's a hard job. I only speak one language, so nobody wants me to translate anything.
Right.
So you talked about the package installer on MX, and I think it's fantastic. It's we're getting into the features. It's very well done. there's an option for stable in MX test repos to search for various software. One of my questions was, how long does a package stay in your testing platform before it gets moved to stable?
Okay, so the test repo packages tend to stay in there until we get feedback that people are running them and they're okay. I personally don't run with you can run the test repo enabled all the time, and there are a few people that do that. And you do an regular upgrade, and if you enable it in like the synaptic sources or whatever, and you do an update, it will pull everything from the test repo. I don't personally do that because I'm a user. I like once it's running on my machine, I want it, and it's good. I try not to break it anymore. That said, things stay in there. I've seen things stay in there a week. I've seen things stay in there a year.
Okay, so it's very much a revolving door.
Yeah, it depends if people are using them. Like if I once I get around to installing Kden Live 17, if it runs pretty well and doesn't crash for me all the time, he'll probably move it over for me. Gotcha. We've done that with Simple Screen Recorder, OBS Studio. I don't know. There's a bunch. There's a lot of stuff. We just moved VirtualBox 5.30 over. Let me back up. 5.2.30 over last night. So we actually needed it for the 4.13 kernel. So that stuff that moved out of testing repo after about a week and a half. So,
well, you mentioned something very interesting. If we could touch on one of the things I noticed is if I'm searching for a package and it's not available in the stable, I have to click over and then tell it, okay, well, go ahead and load the packages for the test. But you said there's a way to sync it so it pulls both. Is that a checkbox in there, or do you?
Well, it's not in MX Package Installer. Okay. It would be the regular repo sources. You could either edit the file directly in SE sources, I forget the whole name, but SE app sources D, whatever it is, the regular list file location. You can do it in Synaptic easy, just click a checkbox.
Gotcha.
But if you do that, then it's going to do everything in the Debian world. When those repos are enabled, everything becomes that's the default. It's going to pull the latest from whatever all those are located, unless you change some other settings, which can be hazardous to your health. I love Deb Multimedia, the Deb Multimedia repo. We actually pull some stuff from them. They're great. But with our own backport repo and Debian backports repo, and the further you get away from Debian stable, the actual core Debian stable stuff, the more haywire things can get when you do a dist upgrade with everything enabled.
Gotcha.
That was the whole idea behind the original MX package installer. Actually, let me back up. The original MX test repo installer and the MX Debian backports installer, which is probably before Ryan's time with MX. Those tools were designed so that people actually tried stuff from our test repo. We're trying to get more people to use stuff from the test repo.
Yep.
And also to give people an easy way to get stuff out of Debian backports. It started with people wanting later editions of LibreOffice. I don't know why. Word processing doesn't change that often, but people wanted more.
They want the ribbon, dude. They want the ribbon.
Hey, all I know, well, maybe. All I know is when the guys writing the MX manual say, "Hey, I need a later version of LibreOffice," we try to accommodate them because that thing is gigantic. But those two tools allowed you to easily pull. They don't actually enable the repos until you choose to install something. So you don't have to futz around with people were enabling the test repo, installing test packages, then disabling the test repo, then doing another apt-get update to make sure they don't pull updates from the wrong place. That was a big hassle. So if you do this with the MX package installer, with either the test repo option or the stable repo or the other three options, those stables actually using the repos, but the other two, test repo and Debian backports, don't actually enable any repos until you check a box and click install. Then it does it. And that way, and then it automatically disables it again when you're done. That way people don't hose their system installing test packages.
Well, the software stores that different distributions have is an area of weakness right now that you guys don't have, which is amazing. Ubuntu, for instance, software store in 17.10, and a lot of people have mentioned this. It's just it's broken. It ultimately it works, I guess, but there's so much broken. And I always try to think from a new user. If I'm going in there, typing in software, it's there. I click it. I click install. I don't know terminal yet. I'm still deciding if I'm going to boot back into Windows, and that thing doesn't work, or starts spitting out a bunch of errors, or the search doesn't, you have to search 50 times. That's going to make me turned off from Linux. Whereas the MX package installer, everything I clicked on that was there and available worked. It installed. There were no errors popping up. There were no issues. There was no searching for something. And then if you just, the search pattern was very well done on it as well. Whereas like in Ubuntu Software Center, you could search for a package name like Telegram, but if you put TELE, it'll show up. If you add the gram part, it's not there. Like there's just weird things that were going on that you guys have kept very stable. And I think that's super important.
Well, the spiritual successor, or the grandfather, I guess, of the MX package installer is an app called Meta Package Installer. Antix has used it for years, but I think it came from the Seduction project originally. Don't quote me on that. Well, I just quoted myself. Anyway, I don't know where the thing came from.
It came from Seduction.
It came from somewhere. And the Meta Package Installer only had like what's on our popular apps tab right now. And it had a lot of cool tricks and everything. Mm-hmm. It was very, very finicky. And we tried to use it originally in MX 14, and it just wasn't. You just wanted to strangle it. It was very, very finicky. There's little files. Each one of those packages in MX Package Installer on the Popular Apps tab has a definition file, and the definition files under the old system were. I mean, if you had an extra space in them, it would break. And it was a nightmare to maintain. Yeah. So Adrian, one of our core developers, he rewrote the thing, and and he's been able to add on to it. Now we have the new full catalog tab and everything, and that's really becoming a really great place to install applications. But it has tricks other places don't have. Like not everything in that thing comes from a repo. Google Chrome comes directly from Google. TeamViewer comes from the TeamViewer guys. There's a handful of other. Adobe Reader 9. Which I forget why we have Adobe Reader 9 in there.
So what does it do in the background?
Needed to fill out tax forms. Someone needed to fill out tax forms, and the only thing that would open them was Adobe Reader.
You go.
We put it in there. People ask us stuff, we throw it in. We don't care. But that comes from Dead Multimedia. Like I said, those guys are cool. They package the thing, we put it in. So those things all come from various locations, and the definition files. We recently rewrote it in I call it pseudo XML. I think it may actually be XML, but I'm not very schooled in those such things. But and now everything's tag and code based, tag based. So now we can have it run a script. We can enable a repo. We can pull in 20 packages that are totally unrelated if we want to. Ryan, you could make a file that said, this is Ryan's computer, and it would list all the packages you normally install, and you check a box, and it'll go, and there you go. It will put it in there.
Nice.
I may or may not have one for myself.
You may or may not have one.
I'm just saying, there's like 6 or 7 apps I install every time. They may. Sometimes you just go through and check all the boxes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, does it now
so we try
download?
To make that easy for people to do.
Does it now download? You said if it installs Chrome, it'll get it from Google. Does that download a deb file and then extract it behind the scenes, or how's it work?
Okay, in Chrome's case, I think we're enabling the Chrome Debian repository, and then installing. I forget exactly how it works because Chrome and a few of the others changed. But in 16, Dropbox. The Debian package for Dropbox was broken, so we switched it in MX Package Installer to pull directly from Debian, and then from Dropbox, and then the Dropbox installer actually adds the repo it needs for future updates during its process. So that's how we did it with Dropbox. And we originally did that with Google Chrome, but I think now we're enabling the Google Chrome repo on a temporary basis because the Chrome installer actually adds the repo itself as well. So. It's complicated, but that's the tricks this thing has. That you can pull. Yeah, this is actually one of the first apps I worked on for MX because I did a lot of the definition files, porting them over from Annex for the original Meta Package Installer. So those things are kind of my baby. I didn't write the app, but I wrote all the definition files.
Nice.
And there's a lot of them now. Just as soon not have to do it again.
I hear you.
But it's got lots of tricks. You can pull from different repos. You can pull directly from people that are doing non-free stuff, like Slim Jet's in there. There's Slim Jet's in nobody's repo. I don't know what Arch is doing. It's not in any Debian repo.
Yeah.
Well, we talked earlier about Antix being able to be run on older systems, and there's news came out that this is the last one for Arch. Back earlier in the year, actually, when we did that previous episode, there was saying, hey, you got about 6 months or so to used 32-bit. So 32 bits obviously going away. So have you seen an uptick in usage of MX or Antics because of the fact that so many other ones don't support it anymore?
I don't know about an uptick in usage, but I've seen an uptick in comments about it, and mostly thank yous for keeping the 32-bit available. I suspect we'll keep the 32-bit available for as long as Debian does, and Debian's probably likely to keep 32-bit going longer than anybody on the planet. I mean, look at the architectures they support. I mean, they really thought long and hard about dropping 586 this year. So we'll probably keep it for a while. For us, as long as the Debian packages are there and we can package them for the repo, it's not that big a deal to keep the thing going. It's not a huge drop in resources, but we use the Debian repo for a backend. I can see where if people, if they didn't want to mess with 64-bit, they'd be inclined to drop it. Or if their user base wasn't using 32-bit, why waste the resources? Ours is. That's all I can tell you. Oddly enough, overseas, tends to be a bigger 32-bit user than here in the United States.
Very interesting. So, the greatest desktop environment ever made, and Rocco agrees with this, is XFCE.
Well, it's pretty awesome.
The GNOME agrees.
We don't want to deal with absolutes, but XFCE is the greatest. Right. So, what made you guys decide to go with XFCE with MX, though, on a serious note? This
was actually a really contentious point at the time. It's less contentious now. MEPIS was based on KDE, and a lot of people in the KDE in the MEPIS forums wanted to keep going with wanted to develop a KDE distro. I don't really know why we didn't go with KDE, except that I know that one of the original use cases for MX was to run on one of those old netbooks, those old EEP 9-inch screen netbooks. KDE, no way. KDE at the time, yeah, they had a netbook edition or whatever, but it was once you moved to 4, it was too heavy. It was too heavy for those notebooks. XFCE was a nice middle ground between Antics and which doesn't use a desktop environment. It's got it's kind of sort of got its own hodgepodge desktop environment. Actually, 3 or 4 actually, but. So MX we went with XFCE because the developers from Antics, myself included, I've done some videos on building an XFCE distro from scratch using Antics Core. We had experience with XFCE. A lot of us tried XFCE and then dropped back to the window managers. So we were more comfortable with that. As to why we didn't stick with a KDE desktop, who knows? I joined the MX project after the decision was made, but I think it was a good one.
Yeah.
And our snapshot technology, the Antics snapshot stuff that we incorporate in MX snapshot, we have a KDE spin. If you want to run now it's Debian, but the spin hasn't been redone yet. But MX16 is still a KDE 4 spin. I mean, there's just no interest in a KDE 4 spin. Debian's moves too slow for KDE. KDE development is fast.
Right. Well, XFC can look at times, it can look plain, just core XFCE, but your guys' theming on top of XFCE is brilliantly done.
Well, our art folks will thank you for that. We've had a new art director since Annex 16, and I think she's done a fantastic job, Asquith, from our forums. She's done a great job. Actually, it's strange. I don't know how many women are involved with Linux, but we have at least 3 women I know on our core development team. Asquith's our art director. Peregrine is our webmaster server guru. That she knows more about Drupal than anybody alive, I think. And Rose is one of our forum moderators. So we've got a nice group. But Asquith has been key in getting our theming under control. And I think she's done a great job. And I think 17 is even better than 16. We took a major drumming for 14. We deserved it too. I go back and look at 14 now, and I'm like, good God, why did anybody use us? We look.
Well,
holy cow.
Did you guys notice that in 16 is when MX really came on the map? It seems during that time everybody was doing a review and loving MX.
Yeah, so we're a little sneaky by releasing right around Christmas time usually.
Yeah,
and so people are home. They're everybody in the world takes a holiday, and they go online. They look at Distrowatch. Oh, there's something new. Click on that. And 16 was the first time we were listed separately on Distrowatch. We were technically a spin of Antics, but we've kind of gotten bigger than that. And so we went the long route. With Distrowatch, I think if you buy an ad or something, they'll move you up the list a little faster and everything. We took that 2-year route,
Yeah.
where it was free.
The homegrown route.
2 years. And then finally they actually emailed us and said, you guys are updating like crazy. Yes, please put us on there. And then it was, we started at 100. Actually, we started at 138. And it shot up real fast in just a couple of months. And now we're 22. I haven't looked this morning, but
you guys are usually always in the top 30.
I mean, we're in nice company right now. I'm comfortable with the people that are around us on that list. Linux Lite, Puppy. I mean, for MX, Linux Lite and some of those distributions are very natural people to be. Ubuntu, we're real close with.
Yep.
And then Antix is up there with Puppy and some of the window manager type distros. It's actually very high. Antix is in the top 20 now. So, we're pretty happy about that. But yeah, 16 is when it all took off like a rocket. 16 was when everybody was like, what do we call you guys? MX15, MX16? And then we was like, we better make a name. So we went and registered MX Linux. So we're good.
Well, one thing that Ryan hasn't stopped talking about is the installer for MX.
Oh my gosh, you guys, if there was one thing I could tell you that you absolutely destroy all your competition against every distro I've used, you have the best installer, period. Nobody does it better. And I'm going to tell you this from a new user's standpoint, why you have the best installer. There were so many times when I was first starting out in Linux that I would destroy my computer's hard drive for one simple reason. I didn't understand at that moment the fundamentals of a bootloader and how it was affecting my machine. You're the only distro that waits till the end that makes it clear as a separate portion of setting up your hard drive, where do you want to install your bootloader? And it is something simple that I don't even know if you guys recognize makes such a difference. But as a new user, that changed everything, because I was like, don't overwrite the bootloader this time. Don't screw up all the other hard drives I have. And that was an option that was clear. Now, people who are experienced, like now in Linux, yeah, I can understand and read through the Greek of other installers and get it removed or move the bootloader somewhere else. But you guys were the ones who did it right for a new person. It's so well done.
Well, thank you. That's great to hear. Actually, we owe it is a direct descendant of the MEPIS installer. Antix started it, and then the MX installers actually branched off of the Antix installer, and now they go back and forth so much it's hard to tell which one's ahead. The Antix installer actually has slightly different options than the MX version. We have the encrypted home folders. Antix has something with the keyboard so that it'll make sure your keyboard's set right before you type your password, so that it's right when you come around to the login screen.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm glad to hear that. The installer was one of the things I liked about Antix when I first started, and I'm really glad we've kept it. I kind of sorely want to rewrite the innards on the inside of it, because it's aging a little bit. But I can install MX in 10 minutes.
Right.
And with the package installer, I can have all my apps downloaded, installed in under half an hour.
Yep.
I'm still booting the boot media for Windows.
Well, looking for a registry or a key.
You mentioned the installer being one of the MX tools, and the MX tools are part of what sets MX apart.
Yeah,
making tools specifically for people who may not understand exactly what to do in a certain given situation. So let's talk about the tools for MX. What do you have that's different than anybody else?
Well, we talked about the package installer. It's different. On MX17, you're going to see an MX Tools menu right on the Whisker menu, so that I want those right up in front of people so they can see them. This is one of the core. This is the core reason why to use us versus doing a stock Debian install. Is you want these tools. So what do we have in there? We have the live USB maker, which is actually an Antix tool, but we have a GUI wrapped around. It's actually a command line tool that's amazingly powerful. But we make a nice simple version, like all the MX tools. We try to do something simple on the desktop. This lets you choose where your ISO, choose where to put it. Now we also have it's got a DD mode in it now. So it'll make not only our USBs, it'll make everybody's USBs if you want. If you do the DD thing. because UNet booting is getting a little unreliable depending on.
Oh yeah,
what
it
version.
is.
I can only use Etcher at this point. Etcher is the only one that works.
Okay, so Etcher does things more or less the same way DD does. So it's the same idea. I looked at putting Etcher on here, but it works. It works fine. It has some. Always have to go into the advanced mode and do things instead of the regular plain. So, so we've got a boot repair, and a lot of people. I think it now supports. We didn't used to support fixing what you call it UEFI boots. I think we do now. I don't know. We just got a lot of stuff. We got a little conky editor in here now. If you don't like the colors on the conky that runs up, you just fire that sucker up and say, "Hey, change that color." Okay.
I was wondering if one of you are big T-Mobile fans with that conky color by default in 17.
I don't know. It's going to be different on.
It looks good. Don't get me wrong, but it just reminded me of that magenta. I think they call it over there.
Yeah, it's definitely purple.
But you also have a driver installer as well for Nvidia drivers.
We have the Nvidia installer. Now it's just Nvidia. It used to be also the AMD, the old AMD drivers, but now everything's incorporated open source, so we don't fool with that. We've got an iDevice mounter now for mounting iPhones.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Gosh.
I don't know what version. I'm not the one I'm not on the team working on it, but I know we've had success with iPhone 6s. I don't know about later than that.
It works great with 7.
Super.
Yeah, it works fantastic with the 7, the 7 Plus.
Live feedback. I love it.
Finally, somebody has tackled this. I know a lot of people in the Linux community use Android, and you guys, if you've listened to me for more than 5 minutes, you know how I feel about Android not really representing Linux like we expect. But in any case, a lot of people have iPhones out there too, and a lot of distros do terrible job, and to the point where I just wrote my own bash script that I take with me to any distro to mount my phones because it's so annoying to deal with. You guys, I didn't have to do that with. I clicked a little button, it mounted my phone. I could get to my pictures, I could get to the files. Very well done.
Yeah, we were thrilled to bring that app in. It was a late minute addition for the beta, and I mean, it works. It works really well. There was do we want to change the GUI? I said no. I want to leave it like it is. I don't want to break anything. It's working fairly well.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm glad someone's tried it with 7. That's awesome. When you get your gold-plated, platinum iPhone.
That's what Rocco's sending me for Christmas. I cannot wait to get it.
Brand new.
That's good. Okay. Apple needs the money, so help them out a little bit.
Yeah, Rocco. They're only about to hit $1 trillion valuation.
A couple other new things this go around. We've got the tweak tool, the MX tweak, which is actually it's MX default look from 16. We just renamed it because people weren't clicking on it, so we called it tweak. So people like clicking on things called tweak. So we click the tweak, and so it has a lot of the same features. Like if you go to the other tab, like a lot of the reviewers online, if you go online and look when they review, they see the theme, they see the panel, they get to the compositor settings. They don't go to that one more tab. If you go one more tab, you're going to see things that turn off, like double click on the desktop, double click, make double click work instead of single click. Things
one of
like
the first settings I change.
Yeah,
everywhere.
me too. That's what's there. Yeah.
Right, Ryan?
Not me. I'm the rare one, apparently.
You like single click. I didn't mind it until I started fooling around with all the MX packages for this build phase. And it was like every time I needed to select 18 files, I was like, oh, I got to hover and slow. And now I just, click, done.
Nice.
But one of the things we added was a little switch to make it possible so that a regular user can mount your internal drives. Because in Debian world, you have to put in a root password. We just took that, you can check a box and put that away. You gotta have root permission to do it. You can't just do it if, So
that's an interesting thing you guys do. I want to talk about is your root permission system. So, and I've not seen another distro do it that I can think of where you kind of give the option of at a certain point within the GUI, it'll be like, do you want to keep root on throughout the session? And you could click yes. And basically, in what I like is you guys continue to warn people still. Every time you're doing something with root, it's like, hey, just a reminder, you're still active root without password required in this session.
Still have power, yeah.
What were your thoughts when you guys decided to implement that? Because I'm sure some people were like, oh, that's a huge security risk or blah, blah, blah. But obviously it's a convenience.
Yeah, it's a convenience. I mean, it's the desktop operating system. I'm not more if trust me, from a security standpoint, if I have physical access to your hardware, a root password is not going to stop me. Okay?
Right.
I'll probably whip out my Annex live USB and just go around your operating system anyway.
Interesting.
Hey,
Don't let him near your computer, right?
don't let me near your system. I'm telling you. No,
You're not coming over for Christmas.
Civil engineer, for crying out loud. I'm no hacker. So, unless you're talking about breaking concrete. So,
Yeah.
I actually was in the camp that wanted it to put in your password every time, but I lost.
Interesting.
Mostly it was people who don't want to have to put the password in every time. Okay,
Right,
every
yep.
time. Sudo, if you do a sudo, if you go to use the sudo system, it doesn't ask every time. It stays. I don't know. I think it's like 10 minutes or something by default. So the root setup here is supposed to be a similar kind of deal. I don't know that it ever times out. I haven't figured that out yet. Sometimes I have to put in the password later on during the day, and sometimes it's still active. So I don't really know how it times out. But like I said, we still have the warning. That's actually built into GKSU, and you can disable it. There's a checkbox to disable it. And one of the guy, Adrian, he's always looking at my videos, and he sees me. I always have the menu pop up, and he says, "So that makes me cringe every time I don't see you check that box." I'm like, I want to know. I don't
uncheck it either. I want to know I'm still en route. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why the root system's set up the way it is. And as far as I know right now, it's Debian's. Debian works the same way, except Debian's configured, I think, now to use sudo for everything instead of Antix is too. Antix uses sudo, but we're a little old school over at MX, so we stick with the root.
Gotcha.
Well, with your YouTube channel, you're one of the few distributions that actually put up videos talking about your distribution. But some of the videos you've put up lately are for Antix and Antix 17, some of the features, and you had mentioned the CLI tools on there. I was watching the latest video, and some of them are pretty darn awesome.
Oh, yeah. Antix doesn't like to forget anything. I mean, we're like, the Antix crew is like the bastion for forgotten hardware, okay? If you've got something... Until 17, I think we were even still support, what was it, the Open Mirage driver, which nobody had in Debian Jessie. We still had that, the S3 drivers. We want, again, the Annex guys have a goal. They want as many machines as possible to be able to run Linux. Sometimes that means you want a full GUI. Sometimes it means you don't. And we actually, one of the lead developers over there, and actually the guy behind the remaster and live system and snapshot, which are, pretty core tools to the Annex and MX experiences, and the live USB maker, basically anything having to do with the boot and the NIT systems. He told me he never boots into X. He never boots into the desktop. He goes right to the command line. And actually MX, I got to fix something in MX because his cheat doesn't work to get to the command line. So that's where he lives. So a lot of those tools he uses. Now, what's really cool about a lot of the tools in this Antix CLI setup, Control Center, and that's all new for Antix 17. Someone asked me the other day if they can get that on MX 16. I don't think so. I think it's pretty particular. A lot of those tools are actually the same apps that run from the GUI. It's just it knows whether it's in a console or in the GUI, and then it gives you the messages in the appropriate place. Like the sound card chooser, it'll either put it on the screen and you hit a number to do it, or it'll flip over and give you a YAD dialog, a GTK dialog with a combo box, and you can choose it from there. We want this stuff to be easy. I'm going to take that little EPC that I use all the time. It's going to get an Annex install on it, and it's going to go back to being my media player. And I actually had it set up before that I could control it from my phone. And I set plug the speakers into it, set it in the back of the room, put it on the Wi-Fi network, and then I'm driving. I drive it from my phone, so I don't need the GUI. The GUI doesn't give me anything. So put the console in there. I'm eating 70 megs of RAM. I think I was 23 megs of RAM with the console-only environment.
Wow.
That's why you do it.
Yeah,
that's why you do it. So it's nice. We don't want to forget about that console environment. The funny thing is, a lot of the tools that were in there have been there for years. We're just really highlighting them this time around because they now have menu presences and everything. We try not to forget anything. Forget hardware anyway.
Yeah.
Put it this way, if someone else has abandoned it, Annex is probably trying to incorporate it somehow.
There's your tagline right there.
Yeah, we never give anything up.
So, we talked about MX a lot. We've talked about all the things that I love about MX, all the things you've done, from the unique apps, the installers, all of that. Let's take it broader scope, higher level, to Linux overall. you've seen changes in Linux. What are the things that you've seen that you're most excited about going on right now and Linux as a whole?
So changes in Linux. Well, one thing is that people are actually seem to be using it.
There you go. I guess
That's always a plus, right?
We've got our own data, we've got a nice steady increase in forum registrations. That's maybe not indicative, but you see, I don't know, it just seems like more and more people are using it. More people, I know if I put it on a USB stick, I use one of these guys here. If I put MX or Annex on one of these USB sticks, particularly MX because it looks a little nicer out of the box.
Is that a Debian logoed USB stick?
This is not. This is just a PNY. I don't want to advertise for anybody, but
he does have a Debian logo shirt on.
That is
true.
It
is a Debian logo shirt.
And we talked about that earlier. I'm pretty jealous of that.
Yeah. So I can run this on run a Linux on anybody's computer, and they're generally pretty happy with what they see, and they don't have any problems using it. Now you can say what you want about counting Chrome OS as Linux. I'm counting Chrome OS as Linux. If you've ever taken that thing apart and gone down to the shell, you know it's Linux. It's Linux underneath. It's just instead of running KDE or GNOME or anything like that, it's running Chrome. It's running Chrome browser as its desktop.
Mm-hmm.
That is huge because people are now open to the fact that they don't have to use Windows.
Yeah.
Some people, are you going to have to use Windows? Yes. There's just, I have to in my daily work because AutoCAD doesn't run on Linux. That's fine. I don't work there. I don't own the computer. I'll use whatever they give me. But people are using it, and they don't seem afraid of it anymore. Part of that's the nice GUI environments we have now.
Yes.
They don't. I use the terminal a lot. I'm guessing a lot of people don't have to at all. I've actually seen comments on my channel that, use MX. You don't need the terminal. I'm like, you don't? Okay. Okay, that's awesome. So a lot of people are doing that. I don't know. It's just friendlier. We're getting drivers faster. Games are coming out for it. I can't tell you the last time I booted into Windows to play a game.
Isn't that awesome?
I know.
It's really
it's
refreshing.
Great.
So
I really try. In fact, what's great, my kid's computer has Windows on it, and we play a game together called RoboCraft. And It's just this dumb mech warrior looking game. That's why I like it. But you build your little men with blocks and whatever, and robots and stomping things. I can run the version on Linux. He's running Windows upstairs. We're all happy, and we're all, shooting people. That's what's great.
That's genius.
I think the biggest thing you touched on was that it's opening people's minds to Linux, whether it be Chrome OS or what. It's opening people's minds to something other than Windows, and I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, we got to keep away is the crazy people.
Yeah.
You guys watching, you know who you are.
Yep.
Chasing people out of my forum, so stop it.
I'm glad you're saying it, and I'm not the only one.
I'm probably going to get something large and heavy thrown at me later.
Yeah.
The whole thing has always been support. But you ever try to get Windows support? Getting Windows support as a private individual is not the greatest experience either.
Well, look, I talk about that all the time. I've watched a lot of Twitch streaming, gaming, that type of stuff. Most of those folks, the top ones, utilize a Windows system to play the latest games.
Sure.
But every time they crash, what cracks me up, they'll crash live on stream. They'll have all these issues and errors and rebooting. Nobody ever goes, Windows is a piece of crap. Ever.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever blames Windows. But the second something happens on Linux, it's like, oh my gosh, Linux is so unstable.
Oh, I know. It's terrible. It only runs the internet.
It's just, it's interesting mindset change, that I think is starting to occur little by little. So I'm pretty psyched to hear you're a gamer, though, dude.
Well, I'm a light gamer. I heard you mention in maybe I think it was your last podcast, you talked about growing up playing Mech Warrior 2.
Yeah, man.
I still play Mech Warrior 2.
Yeah.
Check out my video on Mech Warrior 2.
I will.
I run it on, I can't remember if I was using MX or Annex, but I put DOSBox on that thing. And there's nothing like turning your year 2000 computer into something from 1989.
I mean, what a genius game, you had the overheating problem. You had to turn off your systems to hide. But if you had your systems turned off and that person saw you, you're done.
Yeah, you're just sitting there getting pounded.
Yes, so everything was about strategy and hitting them at the right time. And they really need to bring that game back.
That game was brilliant, and some of the development history behind that game is really interesting because they almost canceled it
No.
Because computers didn't have enough power to draw the robots. They couldn't put more than one robot on the screen. And some guy figured out, I don't know, some mathematician figured out something, fractal something or other, and all of a sudden they could use it. They could do it just because some guy figured out the math.
Very cool.
And they made the game actually possible. It's pretty cool. It's really neat. I think the same guy that did. Never mind. I'm getting off topic. But so when I say I'm a gamer, I have played games. I still play games. I don't play the latest and greatest because my kids are always after me to play more games and with them, and I just don't.
Well, there's a time issue too. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah,
So do you do tweaks to MX to improve the gaming area of people using MX or what?
Okay, so I have heard certain YouTubers mention that they have a very good gaming experience on MX. For a desktop the size we are, as much stuff as we pack in. Our RAM use is actually fairly light. Annex is obviously lighter, but it doesn't have because of its certain aspects without having System D. You actually can't install System D on Annex on accident. You have to do it. You have to deliberately do something. On MX, we're a little more agnostic, so more things just work out of the box. We still have a lot of the RAM stuff that Annex pulls, putting services asleep. Not everything's running all the time. We do have a few more libraries installed that maybe you don't necessarily get out of the box with some other distributions, but that might make things like some of your graphics display a little bit better.
I was going to say, I gamed on the video that you commented on way back in the day that I made on MX. I was gaming in it, and it gamed gorgeous, and that was on the Nvidia 1080.
There's a tweak in the kernel, and we're actually looking at putting the same. It's not in 17 yet, but we're getting there. That might have something to do with it. I can't tell you what the kernel is. I didn't do the kernel. Another guy in our crew is doing the kernel, but there is a tweak inside the kernel that probably most desktop-oriented, at least the big boys, won't have. There might be some fringe arch guy doing it, but not the core guys.
So 17, that's I'm playing in the beta right now. I absolutely love it. What are some things we can look forward to in 17?
Well, we've got all the new theming. We've got the updated packages. We've got a bunch of tweaks to our snapshot system. Actually, that's inherited from Annex, but we got a couple tweaks in the MX snapshot system so that when you name it, it actually is named whatever you name it instead of just snapshot.
Right.
It's pretty nice. I've actually seen a lot of people playing with it online. I'm happy about that. I know Ghost67's been messing with it. I've been conversing with him a little bit because he's trying to put something together he can distribute. And the guy from Linux and other stuff, Dave, he's been messing with it. He hasn't got back to me, but I dropped some comments on his. The remaster system is faster, I think. At least it seems faster for me. We got the Conky editing tools. I don't know. We're just focused on being easy to set up. You wouldn't believe how you can pile all the unique features in the world into your operating system. And if it's a booger to set up, no one cares.
Right.
Exactly.
So our focus is almost entirely on making the thing easy to set up. And that's the impetus behind the package installer, most of the MX tools. Almost everything is get your system up and running because you don't really want to do the operating system. You want to do something else with it, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
The Steam installer, all that stuff is improved. Now, we do have improved. One of the things that is improved, we hope, Bluetooth should work a little bit better.
Yes, hopefully, definitely.
Hopefully. That's tricky. It's tricky in the Debian world.
Change with that, and it made such a huge difference because Bluetooth was a disaster in Linux before. Honestly, it was such a pain in the butt.
They're paying more attention. I think a lot of that's the work they do for Chrome and OS and Android and all that. A lot of that is directly applicable. So you get, everybody trying to fix all that hacker bug from a couple months ago. All of a sudden, everybody wants to Bluetooth.
That's true. There's lots of good stuff.
There's lots of good stuff. Like I said, the higher kernel. Hopefully, we're going to have the 4.13 kernel if today's build goes okay. After I get off here, I got to finish that build and get it uploaded. So there's a lot coming. Oh, one thing: if you tried beta 1 and you noticed that your RAM usage was like 600 megabytes or something at idle, that's going to be about half. Well, it's going to be about 400 megabytes when beta 2 comes out.
Fantastic.
We've found what was eating our RAM. So
nice.
we fixed that.
Well, so do you have a release date, or do you just release it when it's ready for MX17?
It'll release in December, but it'll release when it's done. None of us, we don't have any full-time developers on either the Antics or MX projects. So we're all spread out all over the world. I mean, we got guys, Anti's in Greece, we got guys in New Mexico, I'm in the East Coast. We got folks in Europe. Our art director, I think, is 12 hours different from us. So everything, we basically all work as we get time to do it. But nothing gets the gang together to get things done than set a release date in December.
So Dolphin,
it's coming together fast.
One of our patrons wants to know if there are any plans for an i3 spin. I could have sworn Antics has that, but not
Antics
MX.
has a tiling manager in it called Herb's Luft WM. And that's built into Antics. It's actually on the Antics full, might even be on the Antics base ISOs. I forget if it's on both. We, at MX, part of what makes the experience solid for most folks is we're focusing on one thing. And this is probably maybe the number, except for when you're getting better, newer NVIDIA drivers, this is probably the number 2 question we get, which is when are you going to do this spin? Are you going to do that spin? How about budgie? That seems to be the big one right now. How about doing a budgie spin? Well,
Budgie's
we're
hot.
going to do XFCE, right? Because what you got to realize is most of the MX tools, not all of them, but a lot of them are XFCE centric.
Right.
So they don't. A lot of the experience you get vanishes when you go to a different desktop. Now the KDE desktop spin has been pretty popular, so I'm sure that'll probably get updated. The Workbench spin will probably get updated. But those are done by people either in the community or outside the community, and we can contribute them. We don't really. Okay, technically we support them, but I mean we don't support them technically. But if you throw up a question, we'll probably try to answer it.
Right.
But yeah, so probably not i3. I get you. I feel you.
But you never know.
Window Manager fan, but probably not an official spin. Doesn't stop someone from firing up MX Snapshot and making one themselves, though.
There you go.
Should be fairly easy.
So the release date or the release time zone is December. At what point?
We left before Christmas.
Yeah. At what point do you then start work on MX18 or the next release? Right after, or do you guys take a break, or what?
Well, we'll probably take a little bit of a breather, but we're already talking about the next Annex release. So
wow.
Awesome.
Do you have any juicy details for it?
Right now it's all under the hood stuff, and it's not super sexy, but it's all under the hood stuff. But obviously Annex uses there's a whole System D thing out there. Annex doesn't use System D at all, so we have to keep fixing. And System V is more or less abandoned at Debian. Okay, it's there, we're using it, but it's more or less abandoned as a core system. So we had to keep fixing it as things break. There is a lot of System V stuff that we fixed in Annex, and in consequence works just fine in MX, particularly with the networking stack and a few other odds and ends. But so we try to get this stuff right in Annex first, and then then we can worry about the desktop experience in MX instead of having to worry about if it boots or not. So Annex will probably be the next release, and then probably I would guess mid-year you'll see another MX point bump, probably right after a big Debian point bump release about the same time. Yeah, they do 3 or 4 a year, and we'll probably come in halfway.
All right. So support-wise, we talked about translations and everything. Do you guys have a PayPal donation site for that particular thing?
You can go to our forum. You can go to our mxlinux.org website, and they will. There's a contribute link, and it talks about time and material and cash. And you can actually contribute to the Antics or MX projects there.
Nice.
Or both would be good.
Both would be good. All right, man.
I know the Antics guys in particular appreciate hardware. We had some hardware donated to us.
Oh, wow. Any Ryzen Threadrippers in there?
I don't actually know exactly what he's got, but all I know is he actually emailed this morning, the live boot, the gentleman takes care of live boot, emailed this morning and said, I can't believe I'm only using 1% of the RAM. I'm like, how little RAM did you have before? Because it only runs at 170 megs now.
Wow.
So he's tickled to death with whatever he got, whatever was donated to us.
That's awesome.
I know he's tickled pink.
And so if people want to get a hold of you, Dolphin, how do they do that? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way is actually probably a forum post at MX Linux. If you want to message me particular, probably through either my YouTube page is probably the best way to do it. You can drop me a message there, or a comment on a video. That's probably the easiest way to get me.
You're not going to drop your cell phone number on the...
No?
I'm not putting my cell phone number.
Be brave.
Here it is, and there it goes.
Yeah.
No cell phone numbers, but I am on Twitter at Dolphin Oracle. I'm not on Twitter a lot, so that's probably not the best place to get me. But yeah, probably the YouTube channel. I check it routinely, even when I'm not producing videos. I got it set up so I get the notifications on messages.
Perfect. Well, listen, you guys are doing fantastic work over there. I haven't tried Antics yet, but I have definitely tried and fallen in love with MX.
Wow.
I think it's amazing. I love the tools that you guys are doing. I love that it's XFCE, just despite Rocco, especially.
Really?
Yeah. And, but you guys are doing really, really fantastic work. And I can't imagine how many people you probably have converted to Linux by making MX such a user-friendly platform to begin with. And it's definitely, even if you're new or you're experienced, MX is just a great option, and you guys have done fantastic work with it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're a little more polished. We developed the tech on Annex, so a little more polished for the average user on MX, and it all works out in the end. So we appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you being here, but we appreciate your work in the community itself, man, because like you said, nobody gets paid. It's all free time. It's all love for Linux, and let's make it work. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you.
All
you
right.
guys too, for that matter. I mean, I know you guys are raking in the big bucks from the swag sales.
Huge.
Yeah.
We don't know where to put all the money.
Right?
Yeah.
We've run out of rubber bands.
Yeah, there you go. Rubber band. Okay.
All right, man. It was great talking to you again, and we'll definitely have you back on the show in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I got to catch up to Ike. I might have been first,
Right?
but he's not here more.
I know. All right, brother. It was great talking to you.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
So, Rocco, we just finished with Dolphin Oracle. I have a lot of history here, and I didn't realize it till he came back on the show, how much history from the early days of my Linux journey that MX has been a part of. So it was very personal to me to have him back on here. I know you've had him on here before, and kind of hear the story and the things that have gone on in MX and how it's advanced. MX16 really put them on the map. I feel like a lot of people talked about that.
Yep.
But MX17, it's just fire. It is really, really good and solid. I've been playing with it for the last week, and I love it. And of course, it's XFCE, so the greatest desktop environment ever.
Right?
What do you think?
Well, it's always good to have a guy like Dolphin Oracle back on the show because, well, one, he was on episode 2. So a lot of history there, like you said.
Yep.
And he's one of those guys that is down to earth. I mean, and things have changed since episode 2. He is now one of the developers for MX, and rather than just a part of what he was. So a lot of things have changed, and he's just, even though things have changed, he's still down to earth and is willing to talk to you, and he puts everything on the table. You know what I mean? It's like, there it is. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't say, oh, well, this is the way. I don't remember that part of it. You know what I mean? Like, he's just real, and it's awesome to get to talk to him. And all of the effort that they put into MX, what can you say about it, man? It's just absolutely.
You tried it, and you decided you didn't like MX for whatever reason. I don't know what that would be. You still would have to respect what's gone into it.
Yep.
And how much customization and individual applications and things that they've made to make MX more useful. And I think that's so unique because there are a lot of times where I'll try a distribution and they have their own custom applications that I don't want to use. But with MX, I actually search for MX in the apps to see what they have to solve the problem that I'm having at that time because their apps are that good. They put a lot of time and effort and love into this stuff. And you've mentioned this many times, and I think it's just as clear here. Here's a guy with a regular job, a family, all of this stuff, and then doing this on the side again. I mean, it's incredible what dedication happens in the Linux community for these projects, the love that goes into all of it.
It makes you really appreciate the efforts that they put into it.
Yeah.
So
And you've brought it out. Hey, we just take a ISO and we stick it on a USB and we're like, oh, we like it or we don't. We don't think about the millions of lines of code that went into making that possible and so easy, and how far Linux has come in just 5 years.
well, and that goes back to that where, years ago it was not simple. It was not easy. And now today we're at a point where just about anybody could put an ISO on a USB and fire it up. So it's pretty awesome.
Amazing time to be a part of Linux, isn't it?
If you want to check out MX Linux, it is mxlinux.org. You can download Antics or MX. You can support them. You can get involved like Dolphin had talked about. But I suggest you go over there and at least give it a look because it's definitely worth it.
Definitely.
You know what's also worth it, Ryan?
What's that?
Our patrons. They're awesome.
They are super awesome. So our patrons continue to support the work that we do, and we appreciate them immensely. Now they can join in during the shows and even ask questions. And we were able to get a question in from the patron today. That was kind of one of the first times since we've been doing the patron thing. So really want you guys participating and being a part of the creation of the show.
Yep. And also, everybody that watches and listens, it's not just the patrons. The patrons are awesome, okay? But everybody that watches and listens every week, we appreciate it very much. And that's why we do what we do. So a big thank you to everybody. All right. That's it for this week, brother. Maybe we'll do one next week. What do you think?
Maybe. I'm pretty excited. You never know what we might be doing, who we might be interviewing, what news we might be covering.
We got some exciting interviews coming up. So
we always do.
All right. Everybody have a great week. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux podcast.
It works out.
Well, that's what happens when you have one person doing all the work.
Yeah, right? Yes, exactly. I love it. Zeb, I don't do nothing. I just sit down.
Sit up all
I
night.
sit down and I hit
Render.
I hit start the meeting. That's all I do.
And then he uploads whatever's there.
Yeah.
Never edits
Never edits, never makes posts, never makes Patreon posts, never does
All
any
right,
of that.
somebody get your violin out. Holy
Never makes images to go along with everything,
Can we get some
banners.
sad music in here?
No,
Anybody got sad
I never
music
do
with
anything
you?
around here.
So what kind of dogs do you have, Dolphin?
I got an ancient beagle. He may be the first beagle.
The first beagle.
He is pretty old.
The first beagle.
Can you start that whole thing about how much work you do real quick? Can you hear this?
I do so much work around here. It's ridiculous. I feel so used and abused. It's like they never really tell you care and they care anymore. It's just use you for whatever you can do for them. That's all it is. That's it. I'm out of here.
That was brilliant.